Well, a huge welcome back to the channel. Thanks so much for joining us here on Red Rocket. Don't forget, if you haven't already, please hit the subscribe button. It really does help us build the profile of the channel. Click the bell notification to hear about all our latest videos, and give the video a thumbs up if you enjoy it. And don't forget, comment down below as well. Let us know what you've been up to over the last few weeks and how you're getting on with your EVs. Today though marks the start of a brand new mini series on the channel, where we're going to be talking to leading leasing automotive consultant Russ Boulton about all manners of things EV and tech related. In today's episode, I think you'll find it particularly interesting though, so please do stick with the video all the way to the end, give us a thumbs up and comment below with your thoughts as we enter this brand new mini series. Pleased to be joined by Russ Boulton, automotive consultant for one of the world's leading leasing companies on the channel. Welcome, Russ, to the channel. Thanks so much for joining us. Today, I really wanted to talk to you, though, about the costs of owning an EV. And actually, in today's day and age, 2020, as we enter 2023, the headlines have hit yet again this morning, talking about the cost of energy and how much it's costing a lot of people as they look at their energy bills going into January with bill changes. The biggest energy suppliers have been contacting their customers, we learned today, talking about effects of price changes, with the government confirming that companies have been allowed to increase their prices as we enter into January, and lots of people receiving notification about these increases, with some paying as much as 38 pence, particularly in the Merseyside and North Wales area, seeing that increase well above the government's cap. Now, not to alarm people, the government are going to be matching that cap, but it does show a sign of increased prices heading our way, particularly as we head towards April and the government's commitments start to subside there, and we're not sure what those new commitments are going to be. Scottish Power, Bulb, EDF, British Gas and Shell all confirming two reports today that they're going to be increasing their price changes in line with what the government's allowing them to. Octopus saying they're going to pass on cuts but not rises to customers, except for those on the Economy 7 tariffs. And E.ON making changes to direct debits and bill customers, but not increasing payments for those on prepayments. So with all that in mind, when I got my EV back in 2021, big incentive was the cost to fill the tank, the battery, if you like, was pennies. I was on a tariff of, I think it was like 11 pence or something when I picked up the car. You could charge for free at Tesco supermarkets, etc. But today you can't do that, and the costs are a minimum of 34 pence for a lot of people. So with that in mind, does it still stack up to go down the route of an EV if you're looking at changing your car? That's the question I wanted to put to you this morning, and see what your thoughts are. Maybe you can let our viewers know, particularly if you just got yourself into a car, you might be having those second thoughts, and hopefully we can maybe put some of that at rest.
Yeah, I think it's a great question, and I think one of the points around everything that we hear at the moment sounds very scary from an electric point of view, and naturally you say, oh well, I was at 11 pence, now we're at 34, it must be exponential in terms of my additional costs. 100%, there's no doubt about it. We are paying more to run an electric vehicle now, but we've got to bear in mind what we're comparing it to, and we've got to compare. Essentially, we're comparing it to diesel or unleaded. And I'll just give you a little bit of a fact. So we're talking specifically with Teslas. Teslas are one of the most efficient vehicles out there on the market. And where a lot of the customers and the fleets that we're dealing with, they struggle to get their heads around about converting miles per kilowatt figures, which is what you need to get into if you're going to be looking at electric, versus MPG. Because you might be talking MPG of, say, 50 miles to the gallon. Well, how does that correlate to 4 miles per kilowatt? And it's a bit of a difficult calculation, or some people struggle to get their heads around. So the easiest way to convert that is into a pence per mile calculation. Okay, so as an example, if you've got 4 miles per kilowatt,
I get about 3.8 to 4. I would say 4 on a nice sunny day. But at the moment, maybe a little
summer
bit
conditions.
Yeah, you do have to bear that in mind as well, don't we? I suppose, when we are comparing the two, because I appreciate ICE cars aren't as efficient in the winter, but they don't have that battery degradation that we will see in electric cars as well.
And it is quite significant, in fairness, on the old in the winter, and other vehicles are more susceptible to it than others. Tesla, in fairness, from the data that we see in the vehicles that we've got tracked, and we're getting that data back from, actually, they are more stable than some of the others, but that's potentially because they're quite efficient vehicles. Whereas, and if you take 20% off some other batteries, because there's not much range in there, it feels like a way bigger impact. Whereas Tesla's got decent, especially long range units, they're in pretty good shape with it. But if we were to look at, say, a best case scenario, 4 miles the kilowatt, I mean, I do know other Tesla drivers that are beating that. They're like hyper mile in or whatever else, and they can get better efficiency. But at 34 pence per kilowatt, you are looking at 9 pence per mile. Okay, so the equivalent to that in an internal combustion engine vehicle, even if you were to pay best case scenario, which we've seen, just had a quick look, and what's the lowest?
So the lowest today, on the day when we're filming this, Russ, is for petrol 131.9 pence, and for diesel 133.3 pence.
Okay, now that is for today, that is a phenomenally low value.
Yeah.
I mean,
to give some context around that, the average is 151.8 for petrol and 174.8 for diesel, with the highest diesel price, people paying 201.9 pence and petrol 198.9. I'm guessing those are either on the services up and down our UK motorways, or maybe in the cities. I don't know. But yeah, look, maybe it's fairer. That's your lowest, but your average, you're talking 151.8p.
Well, I think a lot of people, especially anything to do with EV and people that have got a proactive approach towards or a positive view on electric, they get accused of being too favorable and almost a bit evangelical. And I think, in fairness, if we were to, based on this calculation, let's go best case scenario. Let's actually show, well, look, even if you can get it at £1.31 and you're unleaded, the fact is that vehicle needs to hit 63 miles to the gallon in order to hit 9 pence per mile. So that's best case scenario. And if we even quickly, I'll let's make it a little bit harder for the electric.
And what sort of cars can you actually get on today's market that are doing that for petrol?
There's a lot of vehicles out on the market, so it's almost impossible to kind of say. But you're not looking at it. One thing I will say, there are not many vehicles out there that will give you the performance of a Tesla.
Very true.
And hit 63 miles to the gallon. You need to be hitting really 63 miles to the gallon, in my opinion, is more along the lines of a diesel kind of, a motorway cruiser, something that's going up and down the motorways, kind of sitting there, getting that maximum efficiency, driving it. I've had a lot of very efficient company cars, and 63 miles to the gallon, it's not an easy figure to hit. You've got to be driving pretty efficiently in order to get that. And I'll be honest, not one vehicle I've had that can hit anywhere over 50 miles to the gallon would perform like an electric vehicle and give me the kind of that enjoyable kind of ride as well. So I think we've got to keep that in context. But I mean, realistically, we've just changed the figures a little bit. If we do go back to the one, what did you say the average was? £1.51, did you say?
So the average today across the UK, as we're at the end of coming to the end of 2022, entering 2023, is 151.8 for petrol and 174.8 for diesel.
Okay, so that would still, even at that average price.
So just for our viewers, you are using a calculator that you're utilize at the moment to calculate this. So we are quite happy that the industry as a whole would accept the figures that you're talking about today.
Oh yeah, and ultimately what we're talking about is this is just maths. This is just a calculator that's actually looking at miles per, basically your miles per gallon, converts it into liters, looks at the efficiency of the vehicle, and you kind of, so you're looking at MPG, the fuel costs, and then it works behind the scenes out what the pence per mile is. At £1.51, you need a vehicle to be doing 73 miles to the gallon. Okay, so it's that's not that easy to do, if I'm honest. And a lot of hybrids out there will say, "Oh, we get amazing miles per gallon," but a lot of those are WLTP figures, which whilst they are far more accurate, they're not real life. Go to EV database and you'll really start seeing some of the differences between WLTP figures and and real world range.
And I'm guessing, going down the motorway, I say I get 3.8. I do a lot of motorway driving, so I know that is majority of that is motorway driving. So I would expect it's not likely that your petrol cars are getting 70 plus miles to the gallon down the motorway, doing 70 odd miles an hour. So
definitely on petrol, definitely petrol. I mean, you'd need to be going down the diesel, which in itself is not the best for the planet as well. And at the end of the day, it's got a lot of, without going into all the detail of exactly what is coming out of that exhaust. At the end of the day, it has exhaust emissions, and an electric vehicle doesn't. So there is still a very strong argument. So, from a morally conscious point of view, we do know that at tailpipe, we're not emitting anything on the EV as well, and it is still cheaper to run. Obviously, one thing you do need to consider, and I think if you're looking at stepping out of an internal combustion engine to go to EV, is understanding what your mileage profile looks like. And the reason I say that is that it's really important to match a vehicle up to your mileage profiles, because that allows you to, if you choose the right vehicle, that allows you to access the cheapest tariff. So we're talking right now at 34 pence a mile. So in fairness, that is best case scenario, where you're looking at domestic energy, the government's capped it, we know exactly what we're going to be paying at home. If you get a vehicle that has a good range, and say you're doing, as an example, 200 miles frequently, if you choose a vehicle that has a 200-mile range, you're likely, especially in winter, to be dependent on the public charging network in order to complete that 200-mile journey. Whereas if you get a vehicle like a Tesla long range, where you've got a buffer, a very strong buffer, you'll not be dependent on the public charging network in anywhere near the same kind of way, which actually straight away means that you're always accessing fuel at, say, 34 pence per kilowatt, which gives you that 9 pence per mile. Whereas if you've got a vehicle with a lower range and you're doing higher mileage, you're going to be taking, say, probably 65 pence on average on public charging networks, which obviously does make quite a big difference to the pence per mile. I mean, if just as an example, if we just change that to 65, it actually puts it as 16 pence per mile when you're using the public charging network. So again, it's not always a simple case of saying, I've got an electric, it's cheap. It's a case of, I've got an electric, I'm able to charge it at home. If I can charge it at home 100% of the time, I'm going to get the best energy tariff of best kind of cost. However, if I choose a vehicle that actually isn't quite right for my profile, my journeys, then I might be paying a little bit more, and I need to factor that in as well. And these are some of the calculations we have, so we could split what we say, right, 80% of the charging is going to be at home and 20% is going to be on the public charging network. We can then calculate what that cost would be of the total cost of energy. And that's where EVs are very different from ICE vehicles, because a lot of the time we know don't get me wrong, it's very volatile in terms of fuel prices, but we know usually that you don't pay on a motorway services, you go off and you get it at a standard kind of rate. We know roughly what we'll be paying, whereas there are some significant variances on EVs. I mean, without saying too much, but I know certain people have got solar, which obviously makes a big difference.
What are you saying, Russ?
I don't want to make accusations. Don't want to make accusations.
It's very good. Well, it makes a difference,
doesn't it?
And right now, as we speak, it's it's not a bright day. There is a bit of daylight, and my car is charging, yes, at 5 amps, but it's still charging. I'll still today get a couple of percent. I will still get 3 or 4 miles worth of charge for nothing, and I haven't got to go anywhere today. So that is
exactly.
But you're right, that is the exception rather than rule, and I appreciate very fortunate to be able to have those solar panels up on the roof. And if you want to look at our journey around our sustainable renewable energy, then pop to the videos and have a look at that. But I think what your point you're making is the right EV is still the right choice. the EV with the larger batteries, whether that is a Tesla or another vehicle with that high performance, is what the route to go down if you're wanting an EV still, and still likely to outperform cost per mile to a petrol or a diesel car in 2022 going into
exactly. And reality is we are seeing the models that are hitting the market now. I mean, in fairness to the likes of MG and those guys, I mean, they've come through with some exceptionally cost-effective EVs, and the efficiency on those vehicles is really good. So the running costs. So when you actually look at the total cost of ownership of those vehicles, they really stack up. And especially when you do compare to ICE, and especially when you look at fuel at the moment, the ICE vehicle is getting a bit of a kick in because it's such a disadvantage when you're paying the kind of prices that we're seeing at the pumps at the moment. But reality is it might drop off a little bit, but you'd still, as we just discussed, you still need quite an efficient internal combustion engine in order to hit the same kind of efficiencies that you might see from the likes of Tesla. Now, I will caveat this because I don't want to be accused of being too much of a, an EV preacher, because I do have I'm known in the industry sometimes for being quite, because I look at a lot of vans as well, and it's about being fit for purpose. But the Tesla, the figures that we are looking at right there are probably the exception, that there's some of the best efficiencies on the market. There are other vehicles. Polestar isn't as efficient. It's got a decent range, but it isn't as efficient from a miles per kilowatt point of view. So that is something that if you're looking to transition to electric, get your head round miles per kilowatt versus miles per gallon, and get that. Once you can get that calculation, you can then see and really start to compare EVs like for like, because that's going to make a difference to your running costs. It might be that you've got a great range on one, but it's actually not that efficient. It's just got a massive battery. And that's still going to make a difference to your running costs, because if it's not as efficient, you're still using more energy. You just have a better range. And so range and miles per kilowatt are not always linked if you're looking at running costs, So obviously, from a Tesla's point of view, it can have a smaller battery and it's really efficient. So it doesn't need as big a battery, but it doesn't always necessarily directly link from a cost point of view, and running cost anyway.
Russ Boulton, Automotive Consultant for one of the world's leading leasing companies. Thank you very much for your time today. Really insightful. And I think hopefully we've put people's minds at rest if they've got themselves into an EV, and in particular into a Tesla of recent months. But despite the cost of energy rising, it is still been the right way to go when you think both about the planet, but also the wallet too. Thanks very much. Well, that just about rounds up this video. Hopefully you found that informative. Having spoke to Russ there, it's clear that owning an EV is still more cost effective despite the other benefits in 2023 still. So keep an eye on the channel for more informative chats like this with our automotive expert from one of the world's leading leasing companies, Russ Boulton, throughout this series. Don't forget, if you haven't yet, please hit the subscribe button, click the bell to hear about all our latest videos, and if you enjoyed it, give us a thumbs up and drop your comments below. Until next time, thanks for watching.